Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting for the Daly City Library Board of Trustees for September 17th, 2019. I call this meeting to order. Shall we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Faupua?
Here.
Trustee Dowse?
Here.
Trustee Santos is not here at the moment, and President Lagarta.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
I hope everyone's had a chance to review tonight's agenda. If there are no updates, may I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Motion. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. For the minutes from our last meeting for August 20th, 2019, is there a motion to move?
Motion. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, so I think we have our director's report and we have our special guest, Sarah. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, President Lagarta and members of the Board of Trustees. Joining us again, her triumphant return to the Board of Trustees meeting. Our Youth Services Librarian, Sarah Spence, is going to tell us all about Summer Learning 2019.
So Sarah has a PowerPoint presentation.
Oh. Looked like it was going to try. There we go.
Yeah.
Now, Sarah Spence is going to take it.
Okay, I am going to tell you about our summer learning program. So this has been for all ages, I think the last couple years, but we really wanted to make sure that everyone understood summer learning is for all ages. And so I was on the committee with members from the PLS Youth Committee, San Mateo County system, and we decided instead of having different reading logs like we've done in the past, we just wanted to have one reading log so that it was very clear that it was for everyone. So the rules this year were the same, kind of the same as what it's been. Read for 20 minutes at a time. You can color in a little wheel or cross it off if you don't want to color. A total of 10 hours, complete 6 activities. So we really wanted specifically kids to be doing things other than watching TV or playing video games. So anything outside, any kinds of games that would count. And then they can return their log or show their online badge. So that was another option this year, was being able to participate online. So they could come in and show us that they received a badge for completing the log. So we had a lot of prizes this year. So for under 18, they got to choose a book just for signing up. And then for completing, they get a raffle ticket for a $1,000 scholarship. And then I wrote letters. So I got some In-N-Out burger coupons, or not coupons, I guess they're coupons. Vouchers, yeah. And Baskin Robbins also gave us some for ice cream. So they either got a choice of one of those, and then they got a second book. So that was for 18 and under. For adults, we decided to do 3 raffles, so 1 per month, and we collected the raffles for the adults that participated and completed, and the winners would get a library tote bag, a Target gift card, and then Nothing Bundt Cake gave us some vouchers as well, so they got a little voucher for that. So before we even technically started, we were out doing outreach. So starting in May, we did 28 outreach events in total, which included class visits. We went to open houses for schools, literacy nights, the Big Lift camps. There were 2 in Daly City. We went to both of those. So there are also community events. So we went to the Junior Giants sign up. Was it the sign up? Sorry.
The kickoff event.
The kickoff. That's what that was the word. Recreation had some summer nights programs, and the library was part of 2 of those. We went to the farmers market, National Night Out, and the health and safety fair. We included something that we started last year, and we called it the bonus challenge card. So this is just another incentive for, this is specifically for 18 and under. So it's for kids to do a little bit extra in addition to the reading log. So in order to complete the bonus challenge, you have to get 6 stamps. 1 stamp is definitely doing the reading log, completing it. And then there's some other options, like going to library programs, using the subject. I can't read it. I can't remember all of them. There's a bunch of different things that they could do, and we would stamp those when they came into the library. If they did that, they would get a movie pass. So that was just an extra incentive for them. We had 96 in-house programs at all of our branches this summer. So 81 story times and advertised summer crafts and STEM programs. We did something that we started last year called pop-up programs. So these were not advertised in our flyers, but we would mention them maybe a day or 2 before on social media. So it was a way for people to start following us more on social media to see when we were going to have these kinds of programs. And so we did 12 of those, and those were led by our interns. We had 4 performers this year, so that was 1 more than last year. We had a magic show, music, the Bay Area Discovery Museum came, and then we had a really cool animal show. That snake. So we were really lucky this year. We had 4 summer interns. 3 of them were from San Mateo County. So Jonathan was able to work for San Mateo County and Daly City, so almost full time. And then we had 2 other teens as interns. And then we were very, very lucky to have a library school student from San Jose State. And she was awesome. I loved having her. So we couldn't have done this without having them, for sure. So San Mateo County, they did provide us the 3 interns. That's Jonathan pretending to take out the books. Those are the books we took out to the Big Lift schools. So they provided us with 8,600 books from Scholastic, and then we also purchased another, I think, about 1,500 just from Daly City. We purchased extra. They also provided us with weekly prizes, so when people would come into the library, they can just enter the raffle. They don't have to do anything other than put their name in, and some really good prizes, like the Bay Area Discovery Museum. That's the San Jose Giants, not the San Francisco, but we did get San Francisco Giants tickets. So that was really a great thing. And then our reading logs, we received 10,750 reading logs. So summer learning, okay. So we had 6,030 youth and adults participate this year. 453 completed. And then the bonus challenge cards, we had 191 youth finish. So here's a breakdown. Our numbers are kind of, they went down a bit. So
Not for lack of trying.
yeah, I'm not really sure exactly what happened with that, but we have some ideas again for next year. Oops, sorry. So we did get some positive feedback from the community, though. I enjoyed spending time at the library during the summer because I work most of the summer, so going to the library programs is important for my kids. I can check out material for the whole family. All the events are fun. Animal show is awesome. And was there another? Sorry.
Yep.
Oh, okay. The library is valuable because it's a place for my kids to learn. There are events held for kids and all the cool books, good service, personnel, very courteous and professional, great resources. Summer reading program is fun. And we just saw that. And then these are just some more pictures from our events. So that's all. So yeah, I mean, I'm not super happy with the numbers, of course, but I think we have ideas for next year, specifically to work closely with recreation, especially the camp that's right next to us in Ceremony. It's hard to be able to work on getting the numbers up when I'm also doing all the programming. And we just don't have the staff. And so I want to do that. I really care about the numbers, specifically the completion numbers, which is what I said last year. But it's just very tough to get them to come in and complete the reading over the summer, and then our reading program finishes after school starts, so it's very hard to get in touch with the schools, because they have been in school for like a week, and then I'm trying to convince them to tell their kids to bring the reading logs back. So I have to just continue to to work on ideas and things like that.
Well, I will say it's not for lack of effort. It sounds like you did a lot of outreach and even, developing like the programs. And so I commend you and I thank you so much. And even though the numbers are not what you've hoped, I'm pretty sure the community really appreciates it and sees it. Over the years, what would you guys say? Because I saw a huge decrease from, I believe, 2017, right? 2017, would you say that's due to staffing or, there could be things like technological advancements, like kids are just more into, their Kindle or whatever it may be, but any input there?
That's definitely a factor. I'm always amazed when I encounter kids that I know are huge readers, and they're like, "It's okay." So, and that is really why we put the energy into getting the incentives, like Sarah was able to get. So, hopefully, if we can communicate those incentives out, we might be able to get some of those people that are already reading to complete our program.
Any other questions?
That was my question too.
It'd be interesting too. 2020 is a census year. I'm kind of curious where our student population is, if it's growing, if it's staying the same, and maybe some of our school district folks might have a finger on the pulse of the student population out there. But I will tell you, our Junior Giants program, which is free and always wildly popular, has had about the same kind of
A little bit of a
decreases
decline,
in the
yeah.
last 2 years. So.
Okay.
yeah, I'm wondering, kids are finding other things to do, or maybe there's not as many kids, I'm not quite sure, but.
Well, they're very structured programs that don't have really any room to add other activities.
I think it's also has to do with who's taking care of the kids. You know, a lot of parents are both working, and some of them are probably grandparents that probably don't have transportation to bring them to wherever the events are at. In Bayshore School District, I would say that our enrollment went up for students. However, and the other beauty about it too, we have the new Outlook, the buildings that we are on Martin Street. There's going to be 71 units, single-family homes there. So it's going to grow. But I wondered if there's a way, and I know that you mentioned, Sarah, that you just hope that the school, because if you really think about it, it's all the dots connecting together, you know. So, like, I can come to my board, to the school district, and even to the superintendent and the principal for the future. How can we make this happen? Maybe introduce it. I don't know, and I'm not sure how many of the Bayshore community was aware of all these events. If they never go to the library, they will never get the memo. So maybe, I don't know if it was distributed out to the schools to put it in their package, or, you know, maybe a call out to the schools. Hey, by the way, we have this program coming up, really fantastic. It's beautiful. I wish my kids were, you know, it happened when my kids were young. So maybe there's a way that we can tap into that.
Like a marketing in the Wednesday folder, because
Yeah.
I get a lot of
And it's all about
different
networking,
activities.
yeah.
And then there'll even be like a sign-up sheet where you would turn in to like the teacher, and the teacher could help like facilitate whatever activity was going on. So that might be an idea. And, you know, as it pertains to like partnerships, do we have any like ideas with possibly like, you know, connecting recreation? Because I will tell you that Robin, my daughter, attends, you know, the recreation daycare at with Daly City Parks and Recs. She's at usually like the Larcom room, and then but very little of the activities have to do with like spending time like reading, right? A lot of it is like a lot of like movies and like activities of
It
such.
is actually something we talked about towards the end of
Yeah.
the summer session, and doing it in a manageable way. In the past, we used Gellert Park as an example. It overwhelms the library when 60 kids come in.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. The
we
huge,
come up with
yeah,
a more thoughtful way of maybe bringing small groups in.
smaller groups.
And the Westlake Library is within walking distance of Westlake Park.
Westlake
and
Park, yeah.
They do walking field trips around too. So it's something we'll put a little more energy and effort in when we enter this coming summer, 2020.
What some of the community members in Bayshore were mentioning is that they feel like most of the events are over on this side. You know, so if anybody that doesn't have any source of transportation, they won't be able to make it on this side for those summer events. We have sat down and met with our superintendent, myself, the Parks and Recs, and the Boys and Girls Club. And we had a meeting of how can we come together to make that accessible to the other community members. So we're talking about maybe having a shuttle, a van that the Boys and Girls Club can provide to maybe transport the children over on this side. So those are some of the things that we were planning to, because they always feel like they're the adopted child in Bayshore.
I know, it is hard because they're only open 2 days a week. And we really do try to do programs there. And hopefully we can get the word out more, I guess, because when we do programs, we don't get the attendance there. And so I think there's like miscommunication, like people aren't knowing, they don't know that we're doing programs there. I'm not sure. But that is one of the reasons we don't do it as much there, because it takes a lot of work to do a program. But I would love to have them, and I know Patricia is working with the Boys and Girls Club more. She's been working with them to get them into the library. So,
What if we change the venue? Like have it at the school, some of the events, instead of the Boys and Girls Club? Would it be possible? I mean, it's something to look at it.
like a library event?
Yeah.
Or, we'd have to.
I think once you leave the library, it's not really a library event, but there may be some partnership opportunities there for sure. We want to bring the kids into the library. And maybe if we're not succeeding, maybe the next step is to bring the library to the kids where they are. But we'll think about that one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Next item?
Yes.
The next item, by
Thank you, Sarah.
request from the trustees, and I'd mentioned that we will be embarking on our next fiscal cycle, which will be 2020, 2021, and 2021, 2022. That's a lot of 20s. And the question was asked that, our fiscal year ended on June 30th, 2019, so a short couple of months ago. The books have been closed on fiscal year 2018, 2019, and I believe it was Trustee Faupu wanted to see what the budget looked like and how close our projections came to our actual expenditures. And we'll walk you through it so you get a sense of what our budget is and what the money is being spent on. And take it, Shayla.
Okay, so starting with the revenues, that's always a nice place to start. We have 3 different types of revenues. We have fines and fees, and we have, this is not, that's annoying. Yes, we do. Bring it up. Anyway, we have fines and fees. We have generous grants from wonderful organizations like the Daly City Public Library Associates. And we have a payment that actually comes from the county. And there we go. The fines and fees are obviously late fines, but also charges for lost or damaged materials. We do, if things go unpaid, if they're over a certain amount, we do send things off to a collection agency, and there's fees for that. And then we also still charge for replacement cards. And the revenue in this category was quite a bit under what we projected, because we projected in a whole different environment. And since then, there's been a lot of changes in the way libraries are looking at fines and how they affect their communities. And specifically, the San Mateo County Library made a lot of changes. A lot of the materials that our library users check out are from the county, and so the county's rules would apply to those materials, and if they're not accruing fines, you'll see that come in a lot under. And then grants, we received $40,000 in grants from the DCPLA and $5,000 from the Thelma Dolger Charitable Trust. This one is always just going to be a match because we adjust the budget to what we receive, since we can't predict it in the future. In addition to those $40,000 in grants, we also occasionally receive, usually from the state library and places like that, grants where we're just reimbursed for costs. So in the last year, I think we had bilingual books. We were reimbursed for bilingual books, and this won't show up because it's just a reimbursement of funds. Dia de los Niños, we got some funds to host that program for kids. And then also that animal show, one of the 4 programs we were able to do an additional program because the Association of Children's Librarians made a grant through our catalogers. So those kinds of things also add in there. And then the County of San Mateo writes us a check every year. There's an agreement, a longstanding agreement. It predates me. I'm not sure how far back it goes, between the city and the San Mateo County Library Joint Powers Authority. Daly City Public Library provides library services to the residents of Colma and unincorporated Broadmoor, and so that little piece of the property tax that would go to libraries, we get that from those properties, and as they have become much more valuable, the revenues have increased. So we actually receive more revenue in that category than we budgeted by about 10%. And the expenditures. So here's an overview, and you can see the vast majority of it is salaries and benefits. These are just kind of the categories that finance uses to separate out our different costs, and I'll go through them one by one. So salaries and benefits, obviously it's the salaries for our full-time staff as well as the wages for all of our hourly staff. We have hourly library aides, and they help us providing public service at the front desk and also processing materials, and then we also have pages that put things back on the shelves. We have pension payments that have to be made per our agreement with CalPERS. For the hourly staff, we Social Security. For all staff, of course, there's Medicare because that's just a thing. Workers' compensation insurance and medical benefits for the full-time staff that have benefits. So that one adds up to definitely the largest share of our costs. Services and supplies, this is the kind of the broad category. Contractual services is a huge chunk of that. And these are things that we don't have a huge amount of control over. A big one would be the Peninsula Library System. We're part of the system, and each library pays in up their share based on a formula that is related to your budget per capita, your actual population, the number of computers you have, various things like that. And so we are helping to support the cost of maintaining all the servers, the integrated library platform, which is our big database that does all the checking in, checking out the patrons, the catalog, all of that. And then another $189,970 was spent on materials for the collection. So this is books, periodicals, audiovisual materials, so that'd be DVDs, books on CD, music CDs, all things going into the collection. And that figure includes grant funds. We received 2 grants for materials from DCPLA last fiscal year. And then also included in services and supplies are our subscription fees. These are our research databases, as well as ebooks. That's actually probably the largest chunk is the ebooks. And of course, our most recently introduced services, the e-magazines and the streaming video that Cole was here to show you. So most of this are things that we have subscribed to as part of our membership in PLS, and the cost for this, again, is divvied up amongst the libraries by that formula. So our costs are actually fairly modest. And then, as I mentioned, the grant-funded purchases. So the big grant that was made to us by DCPLA last year was actually in two pieces, was for the Wi-Fi hotspots and the Chromebooks. Those are circulating like hotcakes, as they say, very popular. We also received funds to replace a couple of our really aging early literacy computer stations for preschoolers. They're a big draw as well. And then I mentioned 2 grants for materials. One was for STEAM, which is the science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. I think that's fairly comprehensive. And then also a special grant just for graphic novels. We do, of course, in the budget have money for graphic novels, but this grant allowed us to expand that and kind of get a little more innovative with what we were purchasing to really make sure it was an established collection. Program costs, this is actually just a little tiny chunk of it, and it's things that are purchased for the story times, the shaker eggs. They're small things. The supplies for all of those programs that we do, especially the after-school programs, what they do at the Zone at Westlake or the Idea Labs at Ceremony. And then the performers for summer learning, excluding the animals, but, we had the Bay Area Discovery Museum, and we had a singer come in. And then also the additional books that we purchase, that came out of this budget. And that we were spot on with that one because we just stopped shopping when we ran out of money. That one's easy. And then other charges. Other charges is the professional development and training, the professional journals, and the credit card processing fees. I'm not sure why those get lumped together. We actually underspent on professional development and training because with the staffing levels being what they are, it's just difficult for people to leave and go to training events. We overspent considerably on credit card processing. We don't control those costs. Those are set by the company that the city contracts with, as well as, of course, the credit card companies. So we will be budgeting more accurately next year on that one. And then the fixed charges. This is actually a big chunk of our budget as well. And these are internal services provided by other city departments. So all of our libraries have phones, and so we get charged for those phones for maintaining the phone system. And it's not like a home phone. It's a phone, has phone infrastructure. Information services, also the staff computers. So it's charging for maintaining those computers and making sure that there's money to replace them as they age. Building maintenance, so repairs to the building, of course, but also probably the bigger piece would be custodial services, which we do receive each day that we are open. Messenger services, it seems like a small thing, but there's somebody who delivers things between the different departments, and I think the library is probably a bigger user than most of that particular service because we're shipping bins of materials. And Bayshore is a good example. We do have an intra-library deliveries thing through PLS, but because we pay so much for that service, we actually utilize our local city messenger service to get stuff out to Bayshore, and he's very efficient. Copier services, kind of like the computers, it's just maintenance and depreciation. And then Daly City is self-insured, and so we pay into that self-insurance fund. Fixed charges, as I mentioned, they're set by the finance department. They're completely outside of our control, and they're allocated. Each component has different factors that they factor in, like square footage of buildings, number of computers, number of telephones, things like that. And so that one, it's budgeted to be exactly what we're going to charge, so we're always right on with that. So I think overall, we were pretty spot on with most things. We definitely came up short on the revenues, a little bit on the fines and fees, but we're over on other things. And then we did underspend on salaries because we had a lot of vacancies. It's difficult to fill those part-time positions, but most importantly, the full-time positions. And we had, I think, 4 months of vacancy on 2 different positions, one librarian 2 and one library assistant. So that added up. And then the services and supplies are, we factor in, as I mentioned, those PLS charges, and those are sometimes, that budget is finalized after we finalize our budget. So sometimes there's a little mismatch there. Any questions?
I have a couple.
Yes.
I'm a visual learner, and I like to have a copy of it, please. Maybe in the future that all of us should have a copy. So I'm trying to catch up and at the same time write my questions down, please. How is each library, and how is that funding allocated, or how much does each library is budgeted to, and is it for per patron, or is it because of the capacity, or does it have to do with whatever services they offer in there, like computers? How is the budget broken down into each libraries?
So there are four budgets, one for each library. And then on top of that, there's a central budget and two central budgets. There's one for processing the materials, and then there's one that's just general for things like Sarah and the services she provides that cover all of the libraries. Within each branch, some things are like Westlake has a fish tank, so the fish tank falls under the budget. And some things are flat rate, that they cost the same at a busy library that's not open very many days is the same as it would at a busy library that's open 5 days versus a smaller library that's maybe only open 2 days, it's the same. And then other things are more proportional. There's things like utilities and.
So there's no set budget for each branch per fiscal
There
year?
is, each,
So, for example, if Bayshore is allocated $100, just, simple numbers, and then by the end of the fiscal year, they haven't spent that budget, does it roll over to the next fiscal year, or what does that money?
carry forward is an accounting practice that is generally frowned upon, unless the source of those funds were supposed to be directed at some particular thing,
Okay.
not general fund money. And going back to the beginning of the presentation, the number one cost, not just for libraries, but for every department in the city, is personnel. So that is really the cost center for every library is the number of full-time staff assigned to it. So in the case of Bayshore, there's a fifth of 2 full-time staff, so the equivalent of 2/5 of a person assigned to Bayshore, and
Plus, they have an hourly person.
plus the hourly person and their benefits. Whereas Westlake.
So their personnel is not, it won't cost
The personnel.
as much as versus the other libraries.
Right, because they're
due
not
to-
there as
yeah,
much. So
their
it's-
opening
it's-
hours.
It's distributed from where they're working. So you might recall the staff at the John Daly Library is the same staff that works at John Daly. But the way it's allocated, 60% of their time is spent at the John Daly Library, 40% of their time is spent at Bayshore. So the way that would balance out would be expanding the hours at Bayshore, which is something we'd all love to do more than anything, but unless we get more staff in the next budget cycle, it's a really difficult thing to expand the library hours without having the staff there when the library's open.
Okay, so, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to understand, because your numbers you're breaking down, you have fixed cost, you have resources, you have personnel. So my understanding, Mr. Conan, that if they run out of personnel funds, or for the budget that is allocate just for that, they will tap into resources? Or where would they
I
pull
would like
those
to
costs?
think we
in?
are incredibly frugal and responsible and don't overspend, especially in personnel, because it's based on what should reflect reality. In the case for this fiscal year, we were in $47,000 of our target. We actually came under, and as Chayla explained, the reason we were a little bit under is because we did have some full-time vacancies. And it's kind of a built-in mechanism to not overspend on personnel, because it matches the open hours and the staff assigned. So that's one thing we can project pretty accurately where it should be based on, we know what the salaries are, we know the people assigned to the various libraries.
So if there was nothing to be fixed at a library, for example, if there's nothing to be fixed like maintenance and any major any of the fixed cost will go to within that
I hear
year,
it, okay.
then, does
If
the
there's-
next year rolls in, does it double the cost?
That is a great question. No. For major things, and I will use the Westlake Library as an example. It's hard to imagine because it seems so new to me, but it's not really. It's been over 15 years since the renovation, probably closer to 20 years since it was renovated. The HVAC system was failing. So the cost of replacing the HVAC system, I think one would be 80,000-ish, in that ballpark. They don't get assessed $80,000 for that. That's a separate budget. It doesn't come out of the operating budget, it comes out of a capital budget. And the capital budget is also on a 2-year cycle, and there's a team of people that do their very best to try to project preventive maintenance things,
Yeah.
so that if we know, like an HVAC system is coming to the end of its life, or the roof of a building's coming to, so those things are really expensive. They're not built into the operating budget, they're in a separate budget, the capital budget. Does that make sense?
I don't know. I do, I get that part. But my thing is, if the budget is allocate for each libraries and what it is for, broken down to, and if they haven't used it to within a year, who gets that fund and where does it sit at?
The fund balances go away.
Does it go back into
The
the
general fund.
budget?
Yeah, general
I
fund.
mean, to the bucket?
Yes, it doesn't carry, like I said. it's
So it doesn't
very-
carry over.
There are very few funds that if we don't spend,
It doesn't roll over.
that we can carry. Nothing rolls over automatically. We'd have to put in a
Yeah.
request for a carry forward. And like I said, it's generally restricted to, I'll use an example because we just did it. We have outside contributions to support cultural arts programs. If we don't spend all those funds were intended for a very
Yeah,
specific
allocated just for that,
purpose.
yeah.
If we didn't spend all of them, we can carry
Take
that
it.
forward and spend them in the next fiscal year for the same reason, for the same purpose. We can't then carry them forward and spend them for personnel somewhere. It's got to,
Right.
those restricted funds should go towards what they were intended.
Is there any way that that we can get like each library and each budget
Absolutely.
broken down? I would like to see those numbers if it's okay, if it's
Yes,
possible.
absolutely.
And then how is the 40,000 from our dear DCPA broken down, and what does it allocate to? Which
Again,
department does it go
those are
to?
very specific things usually. They will buy things, whether it's furniture or
Books.
books.
The hotspots and Chromebooks are a
Chromebooks.
good example. We actually set aside some funds because we're going to have to pay to renew the hotspot service. And so that's an example of a carry forward. We will be carrying that forward. And those, we bought a certain number, as many as we could with the money that they gave us. And then they were divided amongst the different libraries based on what we estimated would be the demand. And then knowing that if the demand was different from what we expected it to be, that we can always just shift stuff around. And the same thing with the graphic novels or the STEAM books. We purchase, and things tend to be fairly proportional. You need to buy materials with the amount of space for the shelving for books in mind, what the likely demand is at each location. And so they tend to be proportionally, more materials are purchased for ceremony than you might get more popular materials, just popular materials at Westlake, and then a smaller selection for John Daly and Bayshore, because their shelf space is more limited and their visits are fewer.
Every time, I'll just add, every time DCPLA presents a grant for us, it's for a very specific thing.
Specific reason, yeah.
They don't write a check for $40,000 and say, go ahead and spend it. It's usually smaller increments, between $2,500 and $5,000, and they're usually presenting it for a very specific purpose.
And those purposes, you guys
We
decide,
collaborate,
or
we kind of
they,
brainstorm.
hey, I would like
The
this to go straight to,
Things that we couldn't afford in the normal operating
Okay.
budget, so kind of the add-on extras.
Okay.
Like the Chromebooks, I think is an outstanding example. We did not budget to purchase those Chromebooks in our operating budget.
Okay.
So if the grant funding.
thank
for
you.
those.
Because I do know that with DCPLA, when they are applying for grants, because they've applied for grants with Wells Fargo, it's for like a specific reason, like children's books, 3 to 5, or, graphic novels and things to that. But if for some reason you all don't spend it, what you're saying is you will save that bucket and then apply it when it's time to kind of, replace
Theoretically,
or
that's
renew.
true. I don't know that that's
Yeah.
ever happened on the library. I think all of the
Yeah.
grant funds received have been spent in the
Have
same.
been spent
Last
in
year,
that, yeah.
the hotspots, I asked. to
Just
be
the
carried over.
hotspots are okay. So I just have a few questions too. And these are just very, they're very specific. So, because you said that the usage, and I was there when you guys rolled out the Chromebooks and the Wi-Fi, and I'm very happy that, we are advancing in technology and providing that to our patrons. You're planning to get more. Is it based on specific libraries or more for each?
Well, we have to, we paid for 1 year of service for our hotspots, so we have to re-up that. So that funds were just purposefully set aside for that. And then we also set aside some funds for replacing things as they break the hotspots.
All right.
To be
And
fragile.
maintenance.
But if there are additional funds left over after that, we will definitely look at increasing at those, for those branches where they're frequently running out, that they don't have any available.
Do Bay Shore have
Does
those?
Bayshore, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do all 4 have?
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they have been wildly popular with
Popular,
patrons,
yeah.
and really
That's good.
like the idea of having the hotspot and the Chromebook. They can take it home to the homework. They don't have to stay in the library. And it's especially useful in Bay Shore. So those days when the library's not open, they can still have the Chromebook at home with the hotspot and have internet access, which is what it was intended to do. So it's working as planned.
Thank you.
And then you said that, when you were mentioning, staffing, what is the status of our current, staffing situation? Are we, at capacity for FTE, full-time employees?
I do.
We have one position that we're still working on filling, and we hope that we are extremely close within weeks.
Within weeks, okay.
A library assistant position.
Nice,
But yes, then we'll be at full capacity, which is a small number of full-time staff for a library of, our, a system that has 4 libraries.
And then will that be like a floating type of employee, like where they work at 2? Or-
No, this is, this person's being hired to fill a vacancy that was created when Paul David left
Okay.
us.
Okay, so specifically for
John Daly and
John
Bay Shore.
Daly. Okay, all right. Thank you. And then I did have one more question. So I know that Teresa brought up, the budget, and you all prepared this for us, and we really appreciate that. But when are budgets looked at and then reviewed to see if there's ways that we can cut costs on things that are controlled?
Let me take that. Constantly. Reviewed, but, so we do a 2-year budget in Daly City. And we just closed the books on the last fiscal year. And it's, so the current fiscal year we're in now, so it'd be 2019, 2020. They take a month-by-month look across the city and do a real hard look at mid-year to see if any budget adjustments need to be made. And that's usually if there's a pretty big deviation from what was projected, either the spending level is way below what was anticipated, or if it's way over. And part of that is trying to figure out, okay, did we miscalculate this, or did it cost, say the fuel costs went through the roof, and they, budgeted $150,000 for fuel, and halfway into the year, they're already at 98,000. They'll do the math and do the projections and then try to find out what needs to be adjusted, and if with staying within the parameters of the resource, we don't overspend. Unlike the federal government, we are legally bound to spend within our means. But that's looked at usually in January and February is the mid-year review. At the same time, we've already had our first meeting for the next 2-year cycle. We had a meeting last week, and we'll have another one next week to try to lay the groundwork. And I will say, I've been here for 23 years, and probably the last 10 or 12 years, those meetings have been very difficult because it's been the meetings where we've been given targets to reduce our budget. The good news is, I think I can share it publicly, is that it looks like the Daly City is stable, and we are not starting the budget process with a target to cut. Which might not sound like a big deal, but to staff
it's a big deal. It's definitely a big deal because
the last 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
And if you remember, the presentation I've done in the past, where you just saw the staff shrinking and shrinking and shrinking to where it is today. So it's not shrinking anymore. And, I'm hoping that we can all advocate to try to restore some of those positions that have been eliminated in the last 10 years.
Thank you.
So that process just started last week, and a lot of it is kind of setting the ground rules and setting the schedule. The number parts will probably start getting flushed out between February and April, maybe even a little bit earlier than that, with the intent of keeping the council appraised of what's going on and hoping to have an adopted budget in May of 2020, and that would be for fiscal years 2020, 2021, and 2021, 2022. I don't like saying that. We got to come up with a shortcut for that. But for the next two fiscal years. Again, the fiscal year of Daly City, it starts July 1 and goes through June 30th the following year. So we are not quite 3 months in, July, August, not quite 3 months in. So we're in the first quarter of the current fiscal year.
Joseph, are there any, is there any like goal setting process around the next budget development cycle? And is there opportunity for us to kind of see what are some targeted investments or targeted goals for this next budgeting cycle around the library? I don't know. I'm just like, I guess that's a process question more so. Like,
It
is there
is,
any like goal setting?
and is the question related to the library's budget or the city's?
Yeah, the library's budget.
Yes, the library isn't investing funds as much as we are spending them. But.
That we can, we can like review. I'm just curious if there's
Yeah.
like something we can weigh in on.
We have, for years, we have set goals and the buzz of the performance measures. The direction we actually got, I almost fell out of my chair last week, is not to spend a lot of time focusing on performance measures. Specifically, those are number-driven things, but more on the big picture objectives. So I suppose, as those start to come out, we'll definitely bring them back to you guys so you can weigh in and maybe influence, what the goals for the libraries would be for the next 2 years.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And that's all tied to bigger goals set at the city council level.
Yeah.
So it's generally the way the process has worked. City council sets goals and priorities for the entire city, and then we tie our performance
According
to those goals, not necessarily setting our own goals, but conforming to the priorities that are set by the city council. It's kind of a cumbersome process. It's easier, in my opinion, to break away pieces of it and focus on that, but, we are one big city. Budget's all adopted together.
What part do we play as far as advocating for our library staff for a boost on their salaries and to make sure that that budget is concrete for them for a while, so that we don't have, because it's a competition. We ask why our staff are leaving and have a turnover. It's because of salaries. So how can we, or what can I do as a trustee to help or to advocate for our staff, for our library staff members?
There are 2 parts to my answer. Your role as advocates, I think, is invaluable to the future of the libraries. And each of you or appointed and confirmed by the city council, and hopefully a direct conduit to either an individual council member or all of them, to remind them of how important libraries are to communities, and we can help you with that. There's a ton of studies and literature, talking points that you can use. And it's the struggle in Daly City over the last 20 years because revenues, let me say that backwards, turn it the other way. Expenditures have outpaced revenues in Daly City for a number of years. And that means the resources are becoming more scarce, and you have a finite piece of pie, and you've got to cut it. If you imagine you had 12 kids and one pie, and you had your favorite kids that got the bigger piece of pie, that leaves a smaller piece of pie. And not that
So I hope that's not how they break it down.
But you said you were visual. I was trying to give you
Yeah,
a
it's
visual.
okay.
That you can't give pie that's not in the pie tin. You're stuck with the resources you have. And it's a really difficult process to allocate those across all the departments. It's no secret that public safety is hugely important in Daly City, and it's also the most costly operation. And it kind of makes sense because police and fire operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And personnel costs, like every department, that's a huge piece of that pie. We would love to get a couple more full-time positions back. More than one. The other part of your question about the salaries, they're all represented by AFSCME, the full-time, well, I shouldn't say, most of our full-time library staff is represented by AFSCME. They have traditionally fought for the salaries, competitive salaries and fairness and all that stuff. So I don't know that there's a role necessarily for the trustees in that battle, other than being supportive to our wonderful library staff.
Thank you.
Okay, so, one more
All right,
question?
one
Yeah,
small question.
absolutely.
I know we're like getting close, and I apologize. I came late, so I'm like, what is it? Just one comment. Chili, you mentioned that we did some underspending on salaries for the last cycle. Just curious if whatever we didn't spend on salaries, if that was reallocated to other things. And also just curious about the vacancies. Like, is it like because it's hard to staff? Like it's just like hard, like the pool is very small that we haven't been able to fill those vacancies?
It is definitely a little more challenging than it has been in the past to fill positions, especially the hourly staff, because our hourly wages are not terribly competitive. But with the full-time positions, it's civil service, we're a city government, and it just takes a lot of time to go through the process, which has, there's a lot of rules governing that. And so, like I said, we had a 4-month vacancy for a librarian, that was Patricia, and a 4-month one for a library assistant. And that we had, as soon as we knew somebody was leaving, we jumped on it, and it just takes the time it takes. It's just a long process. I think, librarians work at libraries, so we're not terribly uncompetitive in that way. There's a limited number of places you can work. It's the hourly staff, I would say, is more of a struggle in terms of attracting staff.
I think the other part of your question is the salary savings from having that position vacant. It gets reabsorbed into the general fund. We don't carry
you don't get to-
salary savings forward from year to
okay.
year.
We do, to the degree that we can, backfill with other hourly staff, but they're limited in availability.
Go for a
as well.
retreat.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. I have one last question, and it's, there was an increase of 10% property taxes this year, or did I get that correct, or?
I can't say the property tax increased by 10%. So there is, we don't just serve Daly City, we serve Daly City, Colma, and Broadmoor, our libraries. And through an agreement with the county, a percentage of property tax that they allocate for libraries.
And we don't know that percentage. Well, was it 10%?
It's a number.
I don't off the top of my head, but it's actually different for each community, and it's
Oh,
per-
okay.
per the agreement.
Does
And
it-
and in those communities, it's a portion of the property taxes collected for those specific communities.
So it's a piece of the county's pie that they share with us. So in that case, it's a pie that doesn't come from this plate, it comes from over here, and they,
So a slice
That's
added
the
to
same.
our pie.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
And if you've been following real estate trends in the Bay Area,
Yeah.
the price of housing is really high right now.
Yeah.
So that is one of the good things, if you're not buying a house, it's one of the good benefits for the city, because our revenues as a city are very reliant on sales tax and property tax.
Property tax, yeah.
And the property tax for the past fiscal year came in much higher than they were projected.
Previous, yeah.
The problem is, we do have a finite number of houses, and they're not turning over in huge numbers. So we're not seeing, hundreds of Daly City homes sold every month, but the homes that are selling for, I want to say the average was 1.2 million, I believe.
Over a million,
Average.
yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty.
These are not mansions.
So there's no set number for that piece of pie.
It's
It
a-
comes and
As a
goes. It depends.
percentage of the property tax that the county collects for those unincorporated neighborhoods that we serve, and the town of Coleman. We can dig into that too and see if we can actually
Yeah, and it
extract the
wouldn't,
formula.
yeah, I mean, it would fluctuate with
Okay.
the amount of property tax collected, but it's not a terribly volatile.
Yeah, it usually doesn't
shouldn't
fluctuate.
drop.
It doesn't fluctuate a lot from year to year.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Those were some amazingly great questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you for your input. We're learning also, right? Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm actually going to move up an agenda item for the trustees report. I know we have Victoria here to report on behalf of DCPLA, so, hello.
Hi,
Thank you for
welcome.
joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. We had our Crazy About Cars event last Saturday, and thank you to those of you who were able to make it. I think it was super successful, and the best part was just seeing our community coming together, the amazing amount of sponsorships and donations we got. Everything that's donated, and then we can make money off of that is just, we don't spend a lot on this event. We just rely on the donations from the community. So I don't have the final numbers on that right now yet, because we're still working on it, but I feel really proud of how everybody worked together so hard, and I think it was really fun and successful. So thank you for everything that you guys do, and we'll pay it back to the library and see what we can do with the money that we made.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Victoria.
much for your
Thank you, that was
commitment.
awesome.
I will say that I was able to attend the event, and it was really nice to see, so many people attend the event and really, have their hearts out for the library, and being out there in that beaming sun. My gosh, that's why you had like your hat. Everybody had their hats on, but the engagement was definitely there with the community. Couple council members were there. A lot of cars. Oh my gosh. So it was a very good event. So moving on to, let's see, our creating awareness. So I kind of wanted to finalize, so I know we wanted to continue our coffee with trustees. We wanted to do it from our last meeting. We discussed doing it on October 9th during the Filipino Literature Night. And that's to be held, and is that
John Daly. Library.
John Daly? Okay. I can actually attend that. I was thinking that we could do it because the event starts at 6:30. We can, host alongside it, but starting earlier, like around 6 o'clock. So if anybody.
I can make it on that time.
able to make it.
Okay. Okay, so that works out. So we'll go ahead and finalize that. And Teresa, I don't know what your schedule is, but definitely if you can make it.
Are you thinking,
I
Angela?
thought we were scheduled for coffee at Bayshore. I have it here on my calendar.
Oh, I had John Daly too because of the reading. Is that what it's gonna be?
So I had John Daly, but I mean, we can certainly do one at Bayshore. I'm
No,
sorry,
we-
what
no, and we don't
notes?
have to do it on that day. We
We
have,
could do it like another day.
Another day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Angela, are you thinking we would do 6 p.m. until the end of the event?
I don't think it's necessary to be, because how long is that event?
You know, I don't know. The
Okay.
library closes at 8.
Yeah, so
Maybe
6
6 to 8,
to
okay.
8, yeah, because in our previous coffee with trustees, it's usually about 2 hours anyway.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
so I won't be able to make it because I have church that day.
Okay.
But I know you guys will have enough coffee.
Yes, we will. We
Evening
will
co-
represent
enough evening
with the
coffee.
coffee, yeah. And then we can plan for a later date
Yes.
for Bay Shore. We can actually put that on the agenda building, okay? For communication, was anybody able to do library visits?
No.
No, okay. I know that we discussed previously, Justine, you connecting with Patricia. Were you able to do that?
I did. I
Okay.
did. Didn't get to meet in person, but we've been going back and forth on email.
Okay.
And it sounds like there's a lot of good interest from the patrons on actually expanding the seed library, both in the way of like adding more seeds, but I think there's also an interest in like actually having like planter boxes and materials and stuff. And so she did put out, we did talk about, like, we're going to talk further around like some ideas around how we can get that from the community. But yeah, that's the bulk of what we've been. And then I know there's also, Commissioner Dawes and I have also been brainstorming around like what could an oral history project look like, and that's something that Patricia's also mentioned, and so I'll follow up on that. I mean, there's no like set plans around it, but I think it could be it could be a possible project that could bring, like some interest and community involvement on the horizon. I don't know what it could look like, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you for creating that buzz.
I don't know if you wanted
I'm
to-
wondering if we can even get some type of like sponsorship from like Home Depot, right, or something.
Right.
Yeah, because
Yeah, for
we
the
do
planter
have a
boxes.
Home Depot in Daly City. So just an idea there. Okay. Thank you for connecting. So for our community involvement segment, looks like we had a successful turnout for Crazy About Cars. So thank you so much, Victoria, for facilitating that. We have Latin X event coming up September 21st,
This Saturday,
this Saturday.
right here on the grass outside of City Hall.
Nice. I won't be able to attend that. I'm wondering if any of you are.
I can make it.
Stop by, yeah.
On Saturday? I have class on Saturday.
So Lauren will represent for us. And then we have Kasayahan, it's Daly City, October 12th.
Or
25th?
25th? It says 25th on here. Is it?
October 12th.
October
Oh, okay.
12th,
The
yeah.
note says 25th.
Because it says you 12.
Okay.
It says 25th.
The minutes
Is
from
it-
last time.
Oh, okay.
It says October 12th on Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will definitely attend that.
Oh, there it is.
Support the community with that event. I may even bring in some volunteers from Wells Fargo like I do over here. Is anybody else able to attend that event?
I'll be there too.
I will try.
There will be lots of good food. Okay. Okay. So, and I know we went a little bit over on time, so thank you, trustees. Thank you, directors. Thank you, Sarah. Let's just go ahead and start our agenda building for next meeting. Our next meeting is, let's see, October 15th. So before our next meeting, I did wanted to share that I will have the opportunity to be meeting with a few council members. So is there anything you all would want to bring to the table so that I can discuss with them when I meet with them on the 23rd, which is next week?
We need a replacement for
Okay.
Marcel.
Yeah.
Replacement for Marcel. Okay. And Joseph will be in attendance, so you'll be able to speak on behalf of the staff. Okay. So we'll recap our Coffee with Trustees event. I'm gonna still keep library visits on the agenda.
Yeah, I am wondering if we can look at one of the policies next time too.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't-
What was the policy?
We were supposed to look at the meeting rooms.
Yeah, that's right.
Meeting rooms.
Meeting room, the community room. Oh,
We can do that, and we're also working on an emergency closure policy, one we don't exactly
Oh.
have right now,
Okay.
but
Oh, can we weigh in on it, right? Like, can we review it right now? Or, I mean, at the next meeting, is it ready for
yeah, I
us to-
think
Oh, cool.
we're going over with management staff on Friday.
Friday.
So by our next meeting, we should have
Cool.
something to present to you.
Like in the event of like a natural disaster, it would be an example and we're not able
Anything out of
to
the ordinary,
facilitate
yeah.
business. Okay.
it's mundane things all the way up to, yeah.
So emergency closure will be on the agenda. And then for community involvement, we will just recap some of the events that we'll be attending since those will be after. All right. So any other,
There's going to be another event that is hosted at, this is the first annual Fall Carnival. I'm going to forward to you guys. And it's Bayshore Block Party, Trunk or Treat. And it's on October 26th from 11 to 3. And there's going to be performances, candy giveaway, games, food, jumpy house. And it's actually presented by Bayshore Youth Organization in conjunction with Bayshore School PTO, Daly City Department of Library and Recreation Services, Faith in Action, Mid-Pin Family Services, and Mid-Peninsula Boys and Girls Club.
Oh,
I may be
how can we
able
support them?
to.
How can we support?
I know, so we need to put our face out there
Yeah.
on that day.
I may be able to
suggest-
attend that, yeah.
said it's
I'm
October
gonna
26th.
put it- Yeah,
October the
11 to
26th.
3, right?
Yeah, 11 to 3.
Is it a Halloween event? Like, are
Well, it's
kids
close
gonna
to
be dressed as,
Halloween,
like,
but,
in, like, their
it's-
costumes? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
they-
she's being in school.
Oh, it's Saturday.
Oh, it's Saturday?
It's on a
Yeah,
Saturday.
it's a Saturday.
Okay.
Were you
October
aware of it,
26th.
Mr. Curran? I know Ray is
Oh, yeah.
part of it, and
Any other announcements? All right, if there are no further announcements or comments, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.